stop chasing relationships, it's better to be single. All right, let me hit you with a question right from the start. Why do we chase relationships? Is it because we genuinely want to connect with someone, or is it because we're afraid of being alone? Think about that for a second. Society feeds us this idea that being single is a problem that needs to be fixed. We get bombarded with images of happy couples, romantic comedies, and social media posts that make it seem like being in a relationship is the ultimate goal. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if the real freedom, the real power, comes from being single? Now, I know what you might be thinking. Does that mean we should never be in relationships? Oh, of course not. Relationships can be beautiful, they can be meaningful, and they can offer deep connections. But the issue is when we start chasing them. When we make relationships the center of our identity, we lose a part of ourselves in the process. And that's where things get tricky. When you chase relationships, you give away your autonomy, your independence, and sometimes your self-worth. Let me break it down like this. Why do we feel incomplete without someone else? This is a deep question that most of us don't stop to think about. There's this subconscious belief that being single means we're lacking something. But here's the truth: you're not incomplete because you're single. You're incomplete when you depend on someone else to make you feel whole. That's the paradox. We've been conditioned to believe that being in a relationship will fix everything. That once we find the right person, all our problems will magically disappear. But that's not how life works. In fact, if you're not comfortable being with yourself, being single, then bringing someone else into your life isn't going to solve your problems. It's only going to amplify them. Here's a deep question for you. What would your life look like if you stopped chasing relationships and started embracing your time alone? If you stopped seeing being single as a temporary state of waiting and started viewing it as a time for growth, exploration, and self-discovery. Because here's the thing: when you're single, you have an incredible opportunity to focus on yourself, to figure out who you are without the influence of someone else's expectations, desires, or needs. And this is important. The most profound relationship you'll ever have in life is the one you have with yourself. That's not just some cheesy line, it's the truth. Think about it. You are the only person who will be with you your entire life. Other people come and go, relationships come and go, but you are the constant. So why not invest in that relationship first?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
Being single gives you the space to cultivate self-love, to heal from past wounds, and to figure out what truly makes you happy. A lot of people jump from relationship to relationship without ever taking the time to heal or reflect. They use relationships as a way to distract themselves from their own inner work. But that's a dangerous game, because eventually all that unresolved baggage catches up with you. Here's another deep question. Are you chasing a relationship because you're lonely, or because you're afraid of facing yourself? Loneliness gets a bad rap, but it's honestly one of the best teachers. When you're alone, you're forced to confront your own thoughts, your own emotions, and your own fears. It's uncomfortable, sure, but it's also where the most growth happens. When you learn to be comfortable with yourself, you stop needing someone else to fill that void. You become whole on your own. And here's the kicker: when you stop chasing relationships, something magical happens. You become more attractive, not just in the physical sense, but in a deeper, more spiritual sense. People are drawn to individuals who are comfortable in their own skin, who don't need external validation to feel good about themselves. When you're single and thriving, you radiate confidence, independence, and self-assuredness. And that's magnetic. But we need to flip the script on what single means. being single isn't a waiting room for relationships. It's not the time you spend between relationships just hoping that the next one is around the corner. Being single is an opportunity. It's a time to focus on your passions, your goals, and your personal growth. It's a time to travel, to learn new things, to take risks, and to do things that make you come alive. What would happen if you stopped viewing being single as a flaw in your life and started seeing it as a strength? Because here's the ultimate truth: you are enough on your own. You don't need someone else to complete you, and you don't need a relationship to validate your worth. When you truly understand that, when you internalize that truth, you stop chasing relationships. You stop needing someone to fulfill you because you've already fulfilled yourself. And ironically, when you reach that point, that's when the best relationships come into your life. Because you're no longer looking for someone to fix you, to save you, or to make you whole. You're looking for someone to share your already rich and fulfilling life with. And that's the secret. The paradox of fulfillment, how being single leads to deeper connections. Now, let's explore something that might seem counterintuitive at first. Being single can actually lead to deeper, more meaningful connections with others. I know that might sound strange, but once you understand the paradox, it makes perfect sense. When you're single, especially if you're fully embracing it, you have the freedom to cultivate relationships that aren't based on need, but on genuine connection. Let me explain. When we chase relationships out of a sense of lack, when we're looking for someone to fill a void or make us feel complete, what we're really doing is placing a burden on that relationship. We're asking someone else to do the heavy lifting for our emotional well-being, and that's where things often go wrong. Because no relationship can thrive under the weight of neediness. It suffocates the connection. It's like trying to build a house on unstable ground. The foundation simply isn't strong enough to support the structure. But when you're single, and when you're thriving in that state, something different happens. You're not looking for someone to complete you because you're already whole. You're not relying on the other person to make you happy because you've learned how to create happiness on your own. And this shift in mindset changes everything about how you approach relationships. Here's a deep question for you. What if the best relationships are the ones where both people are already fulfilled on their own? Think about that. Instead of coming together out of a sense of lack, you're coming together out of a place of abundance. You're not needy, you're not desperate, and you're not clinging to the other person for validation. Instead, you're two whole individuals who are choosing to share your lives, to grow together, and to support each other's journeys without losing yourselves in the process. This is why being single can lead to deeper connections. When you're not chasing relationships, you're free to connect with people on a more authentic level. You're not distracted by the pressure of trying to make things work or forcing something that isn't there. You're simply present, enjoying the interaction for what it is, without any hidden agenda. This creates space for connection to unfold naturally. Here's another deep question. What if you focused on building deep, meaningful friendships instead of rushing into romantic relationships? Friendships are often undervalued in a world that places so much emphasis on romantic love, but they can be some of the most enriching and fulfilling relationships we have. When you're single, you have the time and energy to invest in these kinds of connections, to nurture relationships that aren't complicated by romantic expectations or pressures. And here's the paradox: when you stop chasing romantic relationships and focus on building genuine connections, whether they're with friends, family, or even new acquaintances, you actually set the stage for deeper romantic relationships in the future. Why? Because you've already cultivated the ability to connect with others in a real and meaningful way. You've learned how to listen, how to support, and how to be present without expecting anything in return. So here's the takeaway: being single isn't a period of isolation, it's an opportunity for deeper connection. It's a time to build relationships that are based on mutual respect, shared interests, and genuine care, rather than on need or dependency. And when you do that, you not only enrich your life, but you also prepare yourself for the kind of romantic relationship that isn't about filling a void, but about sharing your already full life with someone else. Self-mastery through solitude, why being alone makes you stronger now. Let's talk about something that most people tend to avoid: solitude. We live in a world that glorifies being busy, being surrounded by people, and constantly being connected. But here's something we don't talk about enough: being alone is one of the most powerful experiences you can have. It forces you to confront yourself in ways that nothing else can, and it teaches you a level of self-mastery that makes you stronger, more resilient, and more self-aware. First, let's get one thing clear: being alone doesn't mean being lonely. Solitude and loneliness are two very different things. Loneliness is the feeling of being disconnected from others, of craving companionship. Solitude, on the other hand, is a choice. It's the deliberate decision to spend time with yourself, to reflect, to grow, and to understand yourself on a deeper level. And here's the thing: until you've mastered being alone, you'll always be looking for someone else to fill that space. Here's a deep question for you: when was the last time you truly enjoyed your own company? Not just passing the time, not just distracting yourself with Netflix or social media, but genuinely enjoying being with yourself. Most of us avoid being alone because it forces us to face uncomfortable truths. It forces us to sit with our thoughts, to confront our insecurities, and to acknowledge the parts of ourselves that we usually ignore. But this is where the real growth happens. When you learn to be comfortable in solitude, you develop a kind of inner strength that nothing else can give you. You stop relying on external validation, and you start to cultivate a deeper sense of self-worth. You become more independent, more confident, and more in tune with your own needs and desires. This is self-mastery, the ability to understand and control your own thoughts, emotions, and actions without being swayed by the outside world. And here's the paradox: the more comfortable you become in your solitude, the stronger your relationships will be when you choose to enter them. Why? Because you're no longer entering relationships from a place of need or insecurity. You're entering them from a place of strength, knowing that you don't need someone else to make you feel whole. You can be alone and be completely content, and that is incredibly empowering. Here's another deep question: what would happen if you embraced solitude instead of avoiding it? Think about how much more you could accomplish, how much more you could grow if you spent time alone reflecting, learning, and pushing yourself to new heights. Solitude is where creativity flourishes, where self-awareness deepens, and where you gain the clarity to make better decisions in your life. When you're constantly surrounded by people, it's easy to lose sight of your true self. You get caught up in other people's opinions, expectations, and needs. But when you're alone, you have the space to reconnect with who you really are, without the noise of the outside world. This is where you find your true voice, your true passions, and your true purpose. And here's the thing: once you've mastered the art of being alone, you stop fearing it. You stop fearing it. You stop fearing the silence, the stillness, and the emptiness that solitude can sometimes bring. Instead, you start to see it as a source of strength, a time for reflection, and an opportunity for growth. You become self-sufficient, and that self-sufficiency makes you unstoppable. So, if you've been avoiding solitude because it makes you uncomfortable, I challenge you to embrace it. Spend time alone, not just to pass the time, but to really get to know yourself, to understand your thoughts, your fears, your desires, and your strengths. Because here's the truth: until you've mastered being alone, you'll never fully master yourself. And once you've mastered yourself, there's nothing, no relationship, no situation, no challenge that can shake you. The power of choice, how being single allows you to design your life. Let's dive into one of the most liberating aspects of being single, the power of choice. When you're not in a relationship, you have the ultimate freedom to design your life exactly how you want it. You're not compromising with anyone else's vision or adjusting your path to fit with someone else's plans. You're in control, and that's a kind of power that many people underestimate. When you're in a relationship, especially a long-term one, there are always compromises. What city should we live in? How should we spend our weekends? What career moves make sense for both of us? These are all natural questions that come with partnership, but they also mean that you're constantly adjusting your life to accommodate someone else's needs and desires. And while that's not inherently a bad thing, it does limit your freedom. But when you're single, you get to decide. You get to choose where you live, how you spend your time, what passions you pursue, and what kind of life you want to build. You don't have to check in with anyone else, and you don't have to make decisions based on someone else's preferences. It's your life, fully and completely, and that opens up a world of possibilities. Here's a deep question to think about: what would your life look like if you designed it purely based on your own desires? If you didn't have to consider anyone else's opinion or make compromises, what choices would you make? Where would you live? What kind of career would you pursue? How would you spend your free time? These are the kinds of questions that being single allows you to explore in depth. The beauty of being single is that it's a time for self-exploration. You have the freedom to try new things, to take risks, and to figure out what truly makes you happy without the pressure of conforming to someone else's expectations. Want to travel the world? Go for it. Want to change careers or start a business? Nothing's stopping you. Want to spend your weekends hiking, painting, or learning a new skill? You're free to choose. And here's the kicker: when you fully embrace this freedom, you start to realize that being single isn't a limitation. It's an opportunity. It's a chance to build the life that aligns with your deepest values and passions. You're not waiting for someone else to come along and complete the picture. You're painting the picture yourself, and it's entirely up to you how vibrant, how bold, and how fulfilling that picture becomes. So, here's another deep question: are you taking full advantage of the freedom that being single offers? Or are you spending your time waiting, hoping, or chasing after a relationship to give you direction? Because the truth is, you don't need anyone else to design the life of your dreams. You have the power to do that all on your own, and when you embrace that power, you'll find that the life you create is richer, more fulfilling, and more aligned with who you truly are. And that's the beauty of being single. It gives you the space and the freedom to become the person you've always wanted to be. You're not limited by anyone else's expectations or timelines. You are free to choose, to explore, and to create a life that's uniquely yours. And that, my friend, is the ultimate power.